Welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we're unpacking a whole stack of sources you sent us,
Yeah, quite a pile this time.
all about the complex world of aviation emissions reporting. And we're putting a special focus on a pretty groundbreaking new EU regulation.
It's definitely a hot topic and, really important to get your head around right now. So our mission today for this deep dive is basically to take all this dense stuff.
And it is dense. Regulatory handbooks, guidance docs.
Right, even a recorded discussion in there.
Yeah.
And we want to turn it into clear, actionable insights for you.
We'll cut through the jargon, give you the essential nuggets on sustainable aviation. And we're starting with the big one. The EU's ReFuelEU Aviation Regulation, RFEUA for short.
RFUUA, yeah.
Now, I'll admit, when I first looked at this, I thought fuel reporting doesn't sound like the most thrilling topic, does it?
No, maybe not on the surface.
But as I started digging in, it became clear there's this, really intricate world here, and it has massive implications for aviation's carbon footprint.
Absolutely. It's not just about encouraging sustainable aviation fuel or SAF.
Which, just quickly for everyone, SAF is basically jet fuel made from sustainable stuff, cuts carbon emissions way down.
Exactly. RFEUA isn't just encouraging it, it's mandating it. And that opens up a whole fascinating discussion about compliance, exemptions.
Then this thing called fuel tankering, which
Right.
sounds kind of sneaky.
It can be, yeah. And you're right, the cleverness, I think, of RFEUA is how it mandates a minimum amount of SAF at specific EU airports.
So it forces the issue.
It forces a really deep look at how airlines plan and justify their fuel. It's a real game changer.
Okay, it sounds like it leaves no stone unturned when it comes to fuel. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the fuel itself, let's nail down who exactly gets pulled into this new reporting world. Is it like every single plane flying over Europe?
No, not quite every single one. It mainly targets the larger aircraft operator.
The big airlines.
The ones doing a significant number of commercial flights, departing from what the EU calls union airports. Think of it as capturing the major players based on volume.
Okay.
And if for some reason the operator can't be identified, then the aircraft owner is on the hook.
Right. So it's about hitting that critical mass to drive change rather than, micromanaging every little operator.
Exactly. But there is some flexibility built in, which is interesting.
Oh.
Smaller operators, the ones below those main thresholds, they can actually choose to opt in if they want.
Really? Okay.
And any operator, big or small, can decide to include their non-commercial flights too. So it targets the big players, but it allows for, broader participation if operators choose it.
That's quite smart, actually. So let's zoom out. What's the core motivation here beyond just boosting SF? What's the bigger picture for the EU?
Well, our EQUA is a key piece of this much larger Fit for 55 package.
Fit for 55, right. The big climate goal.
Yeah, the EU's plan to cut overall emissions by 55% by 2030. So RFEUA is specifically designed to level the playing field for air transport within the EU while directly pushing that S adoption.
Okay, so it's environmental, but it sounds like there are economic and strategic angles, too.
Oh, absolutely. A big part of this is boosting the EU's energy security, reducing reliance on imported fossil fuels.
Especially important now, given the global situation.
Exactly. And here's a neat detail. Any money collected from fines for not complying, it gets recycled right back into the system.
How so?
It goes towards supporting SAF research and development and, crucially, helping to bridge that price gap between conventional jet fuel and the more expensive SAF.
Ah, okay, so it's self-funding in a way.
Sort of, yeah. Which brings up a point you mentioned earlier. What exactly is a union airport in this whole thing?
Good question. So a union airport isn't just any airport. It has to have significant traffic, over 800,000 passengers, or over 100,000 tons of freight in the previous reporting period.
So the major hubs.
Pretty much. And importantly, it can't be located in an outermost region, so some islands might be excluded.
Okay.
Think places like Brussels National, Frankfurt, Athens, Madrid, Barajas, Paris Charles de Gaulle, Rome Fiumicino, Amsterdam Schiphol. The big gateways. The Commission publishes the full list. It's quite long.
Right. So we know who reports and where they report from.
Yeah.
Now, what about the flights themselves? Which specific types of flights fall under these rules?
Okay, let's get into that. Article 8 lays it out. Essentially, if it's commercial air transport, it's included.
So passenger flights, cargo, mail.
Yep, anything for remuneration or hire. That also ropes in business aviation, if it's for commercial purposes. And flights under public service obligations. Basically, if it's making money, it's probably on the list.
And it goes further, right? even the less glamorous flights.
Yeah, that's a key point. Maintenance flights, repositioning flights, ferry flights, if they're linked to commercial activity, they count too. It's about capturing the whole commercial footprint.
That's comprehensive. What about, say, unexpected situations, like diversions?
They've thought of that too. If a commercial flight gets diverted and makes an unplanned landing at a Union airport,
Okay.
both that diverted flight and the next flight it takes must be reported if they depart from a Union airport. They're really trying to catch every commercial movement.
Wow, okay. But surely there are some exclusions. What's definitely out of scope?
There are. Flights for essential or humanitarian purposes are specifically excluded.
Like military.
Military, humanitarian, repatriation, search and rescue, disaster relief, medical, customs, police, firefighting, all those are out.
Makes sense. You don't want to burden those critical flights.
Yes.
right?
Are there others? Yep. Training flights for getting crew certified, circular flights, ones that take off and land at the same airport without stopping, and flights on official missions for non-EU states.
Okay.
And there's also a provision for temporary exemptions for certain routes.
Like what?
Typically shorter flights, maybe under 850 kilometers, or routes from islands that don't have rail or road connections. Those can go up to 1,200 kilometers. Sort of an island hopping exception, perhaps.
Gotcha. So some temporary relief for specific routes. Now, let's get to the heart of it, the fuel, this 90% uplift mandate. What's the rule, and how does it tackle that economic tankering you mentioned?
Okay, Article 5. This is central. It says aircraft operators have to uplift at least 90% of their yearly aviation fuel required at a given Union airport.
Yearly required.
Yeah.
Okay. And this directly targets economic tankering. Remind us what that is again.
Sure. Economic tankering is basically loading up on more fuel than you strictly need for the flight, just because the fuel is cheaper where you're taking off compared to where you're landing.
Saves the airline money short term.
Right, but the extra weight from carrying all that unneeded fuel means the plane burns more fuel during the flight.
Which means more emissions.
Exactly. It totally undermines the sustainability goals. So RFUA penalizes this. It wants airlines using SF, not, playing games with their fuel tanks to save a few bucks at the expense of the environment.
It really forces transparency then. So how do they enforce that? What if an airline does fall below that 90% threshold? Can they justify it?
They can justify it, but this is the crucial bit, the real kicker. The justification is only allowed for reasons related to applicable fuel safety rules.
Ah, safety only.
Explicitly not for economic reasons. That's the genius of it, really. It closes that loophole.
Okay, so safety is the only acceptable excuse. How do they calculate what's okay within that safety justification? What do they need to track?
It's like building a forensic audit trail for fuel. They need to log everything. They track their yearly aviation fuel required, that's the trip fuel, plus taxi fuel from their final operational flight plan, the OFP.
The pilot's detailed plan.
Right. Then they track the yearly actual aviation fuel uplifted based on actual measurements. If that uplift is less than 90% of the required amount.
And they have to explain why.
Exactly. They calculate this yearly tanked quantity for fuel safety rules.
Okay, and how's that calculated? I heard there was a formula. Sounds a bit complex.
It is a bit, yeah. It involves looking at fuel justified on arrival versus departure, plus something called operational fuel divergence. Essentially, YTFJA N1, YTFJD, plus OFD N1.
Right, the N1 and referring to arriving and departing flights.
The key is that this yearly tanked fuel justified, the YTFJ part, includes the minimum fuel legally needed, plus discretionary fuel and extra fuel, all under the safety umbrella.
Okay, let's break those down. Discretionary fuel, that's the extra buffer the pilot decides to add for safety, right? Based on their judgment.
Yes, the pilot has the final say for safety, but here's where RFEUA gets strict again.
How so?
Airlines are explicitly prohibited from telling pilots to add extra discretionary fuel just because it's cheap. They can't say, hey, Captain, fuel's a bargain here, top it up.
Wow. So it protects the pilot's judgment, but stops the company from pushing for economic tankering through the back door.
Exactly. And you can bet the verifiers will be looking very closely at patterns in discretionary fuel.
Yeah, if an airline consistently loads up on discretionary fuel at cheap airports, that's going to raise a red flag, isn't it?
Absolutely. They'll compare it to flight conditions, weather, APC reports. Does the justification hold water? Same goes for extra fuel.
And extra fuel is for what?
That's fuel planned for specific anticipated issues, like known air traffic control delays, maybe bad weather forecasts along the route, runway congestion. It has to be foreseeable and documented, not just a vague just in case.
Okay, specific and document. And what about that operational fuel divergence piece in the formula?
Right, the OFD. That accounts for the difference between what fuel they plan to burn and what they actually burned. Sometimes they save fuel due to shortcuts or tailwinds, sometimes they burn more.
Ah, so that ensures that if they saved fuel in flight, it doesn't get mistaken for tankering they didn't justify.
Precisely. It balances the equation. It's all designed to make hiding economic tankering incredibly difficult.
It sounds incredibly detailed.
Yeah.
And I heard something about needing to account for all flights at an airport, not just the ones where they might have tankered.
Yes, that's another crucial check. To calculate that yearly tanked quantity for fuel safety rules, they have to consider all their flights arriving and departing at that Union airport.
Not just cherry-picking the flights where they were below 90%.
Nope. It forces them to show their entire fuel strategy at that location. It prevents hiding tankering instances by burying them in the overall numbers. It's a system of checks and balances.
Makes sense. It's a full picture audit. And all this data you mentioned, OFPs, fuel delivery notes, onboard systems, it's a lot to manage. And based on UTC departure time for reporting periods.
It is. It requires airlines to be much more meticulous, but it drives towards that goal of genuine sustainability. Which brings us to the next pillars, monitoring and verification.
Right. How does the monitoring work?
Well, operators have to monitor flights and fuel info for the whole reporting period, Jan 1st to the 3rd to 31st of the previous year. So the data for the report due in 2025 is collected throughout 2024.
And they need a system for that.
A robust management system, yeah. Define procedures to track all flights owned, leased in, ensuring everything's complete, accurate, consistent, traceable.
What key things are they monitoring?
The completeness of flight lists, plan versus actual fuel burn, the fuel uplifted, using the right density factors, block times, and really importantly, records of any data gaps and all the supporting documents if they ever fall below that 90% uplift.
Documentation is key.
Absolutely. And they recommend cross-checking internal data with external sources like the Eurocontrol ETS support facility tool.
Good practice. Makes sense.
And ideally using automation. Automated queries pulling data from internal systems into the reporting template directly minimizes human error.
Yeah, you'd need that with this volume of data. Okay, so monitoring is done. What about reporting and verification? Deadlines.
The verified ReFuelEU report, plus the verifier's own report, has to go to the competent authority and ESI by March 31st of the year after the reporting period.
So for 2024 data, it's due March 31st, 2025.
Correct.
And who does the verifying? Can any old auditor do it?
Nope. It has to be an independent verifier who is already accredited under the EU emissions trading system, the EU ETS.
Ah, so they're using the existing accredited verifiers.
Yeah.
Smart. Keeps it harmonized.
Exactly. No need for a whole new accreditation process. And their job isn't just checking the math.
Right, they dig deeper.
They assess the entire fuel strategy, scrutinize data sources, check flight data consistency, look at how excluded or exempted flights were handled, examine fuel procedures, and really probe any data gaps. They're pattern hunting.
Looking for inconsistencies or red flags? What if there are big data gaps, like over 5%?
Then the operator has to explain why they're missing data and talk to their competent authority. They also have to submit an improvement report the following year detailing how they'll fix the gaps.
Accountability.
And they need to keep all justifying documents for at least 4 years, the reporting year, plus 3 more. Got to be ready to prove compliance.
Makes sense. Okay, we've really gotten into the weeds of RFUA's mechanics. It's clear how detailed it is. How does this fit into the, the bigger picture of aviation emissions rules? It's not the only game in town, right?
Definitely not. It's a major piece, but it sits alongside other market-based measures, MBMs, like the EU ETS you just mentioned.
Right, the EU emissions trading system, the cap and trade scheme.
Exactly. Been around a while, now focused mainly on flights within the EEA, plus routes to Switzerland and the UK. Operators monitor, report, verify emissions, surrender allowances, standard factor, 3.16 tons CO2 per ton of jet fuel.
And there are thresholds for that too, right? Not every tiny operator is in the full ETS.
Correct. There are de minimis thresholds like less than 10,000 tons CO2 or fewer than 243 flights in the wider scope, and simplified rules for small emitters.
Okay, so that's the EU system. What about internationally?
That's where CORSIA comes in, the carbon offsetting and reduction scheme for international aviation.
Run by ICO, the global body.
Yep. And unlike EU ETS's cap and trade, CORSIA focuses on offsetting emission increases above a baseline, specifically for international flights.
Who's covered?
Operators managed by EEA states or the UK are in if their international CO2 emissions from planes, not helicopters, go over 10,000 tons.
And it's being rolled out in phases.
Yeah, it had a voluntary pilot phase. Now it's in the first phase, 2024-26, which is still voluntary for states. Then the second phase, 2027-35, becomes mandatory for most states. Similar flight exemptions to state, humanitarian, medical, etc.
Okay. And then there's the UK's own system post-Brexit.
Yes, the UK ETS, set up after leaving the EU, driving their own climate goals, including aviation, big focus on SF there too. Similar thresholds to EU ETS.
And Switzerland.
The CHETS, that one's actually linked with the EU ETS since 2020. So for flights covered by both, there's this sort of one-stop shop reporting, which helps simplify things a bit.
Okay, so it's a patchwork quilt of regulations.
Yeah.
EU ETS, CORSIA, UK ETS, CHETS. How do airlines even figure out which rules apply to which flight? I saw mentions of Table A and Table B in the source materials.
Those tables are absolutely essential. They're complex, but they map it out. They tell operators which routes fall under which scheme, or sometimes multiple schemes for reporting and compliance.
Could you give an example?
Sure. A flight from, say, Gran Canaria, which is an EEA outermost region, to Rome, an EE state. That single flight needs to be considered for inclusion in all of them. EU ETS, CHETS, UK ETS, and CORSIA.
Wow. That really highlights the complexity airlines are facing. They need serious tracking systems just to know which rules apply where.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've laid out the rules. But what about the real world? The future challenges?
Yeah.
What are the big hurdles for RFEUA? And is it actually going to, move the needle on sustainable aviation?
Well, the elephant in the room is definitely availability.
Not enough of it.
Right now, nowhere near enough.
Yeah.
Production scale just isn't there to meet the demand RFUA is mandating. It's a classic chicken and egg situation.
Airlines needed to comply, but producers won't scale up massively without guaranteed long-term demand, which the mandate provides, but the supply isn't there yet.
Exactly. And that leads to the next challenge, the economic impact.
Cost.
Scarcity plus the inherently higher cost of SAF right now means prices could go up significantly.
Passed on to passengers, higher ticket prices.
It's a real possibility. Airlines will likely have to pass on at least some of those increased fuel costs.
So travelers might feel it in their wallets. It's the cost of transitioning, I suppose.
It is, and it also creates a potential competitive disadvantage for European airlines.
How so?
If EU carriers are mandated to use expensive SAF, but competitors flying into Europe from regions without such strict rules aren't, well, it creates an uneven playing field.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So availability and cost are huge challenges. What about the ultimate goal? Will RFUA actually make aviation greener?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Its success really hinges on several things happening together, like continued rapid development of more efficient SAF production, airlines fully embracing these new fuels, not just complying grudgingly, and critically, coordinated efforts internationally, governments, organizations to create that level playing field we talked about.
So RFEUA is a big, bold step, but it's just one piece.
A very significant piece, but yes, it needs the whole ecosystem to move with it. It's also interesting that union airports themselves have reporting requirements now.
Oh yeah, on what?
They have to report by March 2025, and then every 2 years, on their projects and plans for hydrogen and electricity infrastructure.
So looking beyond just SAF to other potential long-term solutions like hydrogen planes or electric ground operations.
Exactly. It shows a broader push for decarbonization across the board.
Well, this has been quite the deep dive. We've covered a ton of ground, from the intricate details of RFUA's fuel reporting to how it fits into that wider global picture.
It's definitely complex, but hopefully we've made it a bit clearer for you. Understanding this regulation is pretty key to understanding where aviation is heading.
Absolutely. And it's easy to get lost in the rules, the acronyms. But I think the big takeaway is that this shift to sustainable aviation, it needs everyone.
It's not just regulations from Brussels.
No, it's governments, it's airlines investing and innovating, and it's also us, the passengers, making conscious choices.
That's a really important point. Our choices do send signals.
So maybe next time you're planning a trip, just take a moment, think about the environmental side. Maybe look into which airlines are really pushing forward on sustainability.
Every little bit helps drive the change.
It really does. It's an exciting, challenging, but ultimately necessary transformation for the aviation industry. And, we're all on this journey together.